Welcome back to our How to Knit for Beginners series, lesson 11, decreases. Decreases are a reduction in the number of stitches. You can go from 2 stitches to 1 or 3 stitches down to 1. It helps in shaping your project. So this one's making it a more narrow project, but you could go down and then use your knowledge from lesson 10 where you increase and go back up in your stitches to create visually interesting patterns, or completely shape it and decrease it down to nothing, say in a shawl. So today we're going to learn how to slip knit, which is also written as SSK, as well as a k2tog or knit 2 together, as well as the 3 down to 1, which is an SSSK, and a k3tog or knit 3 together. Plus we're going to learn the CDD, which is central double decrease, and a bonus, you're going to learn how to make a PSSO, which is pass the slip stitch over. So we're going to work on all those today, plus finish off your grandma's favorite dishcloth pattern, and we'll have a link to that pattern down below, as well as double names that you might see these in patterns. All this knowledge is for your use to use on future projects, just as we've been building in our series so far. Welcome to Good Knit Kisses. We're all about helping you stitch your love and love your stitches. Be sure and click down in the video description below so that you can get all the referenced links, and also a blog spelling out all these different stitches we're going to go over today. Plus, you'll have timestamps, and you can click on the chapters down below or click on the individual timestamp to see that particular decrease that you are needing for your particular pattern. This video is primarily used as an overview so that if you find something in a pattern, you can use this as a reference to find exactly how to make that particular stitch. This is not to be used for designing or anything, but at the very end, after we do the demonstration, I'm going to show you a little bit more specifics in understanding the way the stitches move, and we'll have some information thrown in along the way to help you as well, but we'll have some more visual examples later on. Let's dive right into actually making the stitches. This is just a housekeeping note about right and left-handed. This video I am filming with my right hand as my dominant hand. It will be flipped or mirrored for our left-handed users. Just know if you are a left-handed user or you're right-handed teaching a left-handed person, most patterns are written for a right-handed person. Now, if you see an SSK or a k2tog and I say right or left or leans right or left, just know that those directions are for right-handed users. However, you can do the same performed mechanics that I am doing, moving stuff on certain needles, and it will turn out the correct way for your pattern. It will be fine. I'm going to talk about things leaning a certain direction, like toward the middle or towards the outside, so that I don't actually say right or left-handed, and it will still pertain to you and hopefully be less confusing in that way. To help fight this confusion, I'm going to be using the words working needle for this free needle that's over here in your dominant hand, and then non-working needle for the part where you're offloading or taking your stitches off of. So I hope that you can understand that. I hope that helps, and let's begin. In this example, I have 31 stitches cast on. I've got a few rows of garter stitch with a couple of stitches in for garter stitch on the ends. I'm going to work some stitches to decrease on the front or the beginning of the row, and some in the middle and also at the end. So if you work your example, you can see what those look like on yours. Let's start with the knit 2 together. You're going to work the knit 2 together most often, as that's what's called for in many patterns when it says decrease, and that's the one that's easiest to use. Without worrying if it leans to the right or left, let's just go ahead and do this first, and I'm going to show you which direction it goes. So let's knit in a couple of stitches for our edge stitches. Okay, we've got 1, 2, I'm going to knit one more. Okay, now we're going to work with the next 2 stitches on our non-working needle. So take your working needle and insert the tip into this second stitch. So we have 1, 2. We're going to go into that second stitch and through it all the way to the first stitch. So it goes through both at the same time. Now we're going to take our working yarn and yarn over and pull through a loop, and we drop off the old 2, and we've decreased our stitches from 2 down to 1 stitch. Now, when you do that, you can see that the stitch that the working needle went into first is actually laying on top. And you can see that it's angled in this direction. It's actually going towards the working needle. Now, that needle now has the new stitches, but you can see how when it angles this direction, it's putting the 2 stitches together, and then you have the new stitch on top. The new stitch on top is actually your decrease row, and the row below is just the effect of what's happening when you do that. So when you start making a bunch of these stitches, it's going to lean in that direction. In this case, because we've done it towards the edge, it's leaning towards the edge. Okay, let's knit in a few more stitches. I'm going to go about to the middle. So I'm in the middle of my knitting. Let's go ahead and do that again. We're going to take the next 2 stitches, go in to the second stitch, through to the first, and work those 2 stitches together by yarning over and then pulling up a stitch and then letting the other 2 drop off. Just slide them right off. And you can see it very clearly leaning towards the beginning edge that we had started with. Okay, let's go to 5 stitches to the end. Okay, I've got my 5 stitches left, and I've got 2 stitches on the very end that will be part of my edging, plus 1 for sort of a buffer stitch to have a long knit column here. And then these next 2 stitches we're going to work together just as we did before. So knitting these 2 stitches together, go into the second stitch, through the first as well, and just knit those 2 stitches as if it were 1. It goes from 2 down to 1, and you can see it now is leaning towards the inside of your work, okay, away from the edge. Go ahead and knit that next stitch and knit the last 2. And you can take a look at your work better when you work a wrong side row. So go ahead and knit your edge stitches and purl all the way back, and then we'll look at what these stitches look like. After we've completed our knit 2 together row, you can see that these 2 stitches here were pushed together. It's actually this row above it, which was the decrease row, but you can see how this stitch here is leaning in this direction. Okay, so it's going towards our edge. Now, it is a right leaning decrease. It is leaning to the right for right-handed knitters, but you just need to know that when you make it near the edge, it's going to go, in your leading edge, it's going to go in this direction. When you go to the middle, you can see it's also leaning in that direction, but if you had several more on top of each other, you would see that it continues to go in that direction. It's harder to tell now because there are just 2 side by side, and it just decreases down to 1 stitch, but you can see right here that this column overlaps this column underneath. If we go down to the end, you can see that this second column ends. We have 1, 2 on the garter edge, and then we have 1 here. This column here is covering this column here. So it is leaning towards the main part of the knitting. It is not going to the outside. All right, let's take a look at an SSK, which leans in the opposite direction. The SSK, or slip knit, is a stitch that leans in the opposite direction of the knit 2 together. In order to do this, we slip the first 2 stitches and then we knit them through the back loop. So let's go ahead and knit our edge stitches. 1, 2, and I'm going to knit 1 more stitch in, 1 column into our stockinette field. We're going to work 2 stitches together, but not as a knit 2 together. We're going to slip both of these stitches knitwise, meaning we're going to take our non-working needle and go into the first stitch as if we were going to knit, but we just let it slide off of the other needle. Okay, now it's turned in a different direction. You see how the front of that little V is now facing the opposite way. So if you did the knit 2 together, it was going in the other direction, and it was laying like this, and now we're turning it and it's going to lay like this on top of our next stitch. So let's do that one more time. We're going to slip as if to knit, and it turns it. Then we're going to take the next stitch and do the same. Slipped as if to knit, and it turns it. And now when we work these 2 stitches together, it's going to lay the first stitch on top of the second stitch. So now we want to put our non-working needle into the front of these 2 stitches, and we're going to knit into the back loop, and our working needle is set up correctly to do that. It's already in the back of these stitches, and you're just going to knit them, yarn over, and knit them both together, pull up 1 loop, you drop off the 2 old loops. And now you can see you've turned the direction of this loop down here in the opposite way. Okay, so now it's leading away from your first edge. Let's go ahead and knit down to the middle. Okay, I'm somewhere in the middle here, and I'm going to work these next 2 stitches together. Let's do that again. We're going to slip as if to knit once and slip as if to knit twice, and we're going to knit these 2 together in the back loop. The other thing you can do is slide both of them over to your other needle and then insert your working needle into the back of those stitches. I generally do it the other way because it saves me an extra step. So go ahead and yarn over and pull up a loop to knit these 2 into the back of the loop. And now you have an SSK leaning in this direction over here, pointed away from your working needle. I'm going to go ahead and knit till 5 stitches to the end of my knitting and work this one more time. Okay, I'm 5 stitches to the end of my row, and I'm going to work these next 2 stitches together, but as a slip, slip, knit, SSK, so slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, insert your other needle into the front of those stitches, and knit them both together, just like that. And now, when we work the rest of our row, you can see that that is pointed towards your ending edge. So it is pointed in this direction over here. And when you work another knit row, you'll be able to see that more clearly. Go ahead and work another row for stockinette, meaning you purl on the back side, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, looking at the slip slip knit, you can see that it is now leaning in the opposite direction of the leading edge. When you make it in that location, if you put it in the middle, it seems to be just fine, kind of hangs out in the middle, but you can see it has a little bit of a bump. You can tell that one is a little bit different than if you look back down to our knit 2 together, the SSK is just a little bit more obvious. And then go down here to the end of the row, and you can see that it is leaning towards the end of the row rather than towards the inside of our knitting, okay, towards the middle. So it's leaning away. So that is a left leaning decrease, an SSK, but really you just need to know how to make it. Okay, let's move on to our next stitch. We're going to work 3 stitches down to 1, and typically this would happen in the middle of your work. So say you have a center column of stitches and you want to work these 3 stitches all the way down into 1. Whether it leans to the right or the left or center is up to the stitch that is being performed. In this case, I'm going to show you how to make an SSSK, which is a slip, 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 knit, stitch. Okay, so let's do that now. We're going to work up until 1 stitch before our middle that we want to do. So we're going to work with these 3 stitches together. We're going to slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit. So we do that 3 times, and then now insert our non-working needle into the front of our stitches on our working needle. And then we just work all 3 of those stitches together. So we just yarn over and pull through. Now the best way to do this is just work on the tips of your needles so you don't overstretch your stitches down below. And you can see now that this stitch on this side, the first one that was worked, is pointing toward the other 2, and therefore it leans in that direction over there. So it's a very slanted stitch. It's much heavier looking than the SSK because it has 1 extra column of stitches. I'm going to go ahead and knit up this right side and wrong side and let you see it laying that other direction. So this is what our SSSK looks like. You can see the 3 stitches down to 1, and it heavily leans in this direction, which is towards this end of our knitting, the very end of our knitting. It points in that direction. And you can also do that at the beginning of your row or at the end of your row, but it will still lean in that other direction. So depending upon what your pattern calls for, that's what it will do. All right, let's work the knit 3 together, or k3tog or TOG. We are knitting up into 1 stitch before our middle or central stitch. I've got these 3 stitches that I want to work together. I've got a little stitch marker here to show you the middle one. So in this case, we're working just like we've done with the knit 2 together, except we're going to go through 3 stitches. So we go over 1, 2, 3, place our working needle into that 3rd stitch, and we're going to go through all 3 at the same time. And on this one, I think it's very important to make sure that you're on the tip of your needle here. You can hold on to it with your finger and just get the tip in there. And right when you're at that point, you could put your other finger on there to hold it still. Go ahead and yarn over and pull through that loop. Okay, make sure you got the whole loop and not split it. So go right in here like that, yarn over, pull up that loop, and then drop all 3. And you have now made the knit 3 together, and you're laying this stitch, the 3rd one, over on top of the other 2. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to show you what this looks like after working another stockinette row. We'll see you in a moment. All right, I've worked an extra stockinette row, and you can see how this stitch here is leaning on top of the other 2. These are my 3 columns here, and this is the middle, and it's leaning in this direction towards the beginning of our knitting. Okay, so that is 3 stitches down to 1, the knit 3 together. It does lay a little flatter than the SSSK, which is right here. I've got them right above each other, and you can really see it kind of zigzag around. You wouldn't normally see this in a pattern this way, but just so you know you did it right, it's going to lean in this direction. The CDD is a central double decrease. It's a relatively new term, but it means the same as S2KPO, which is slip 2 together knitwise, and then you knit 1 and pass the 2 slip stitches over. So let's do that now. We're going to slip these 2 stitches together knitwise. So this one actually lays really flat where it's very central. The middle center stitch is going to be on top, and then the other 2 are going to be underneath it. So how we do that is we start with the 2nd stitch. You're going to put your working needle in first. Remember what I said about it being on top? Well, this is it. So we're putting it in our middle stitch first, and then we go into the 2nd one, and instead of knitting them together, we're just going to slide it off of our needle. Okay, now they're set up, and now we're going to knit the next stitch. That's the 3rd stitch. And then we want to slip these 2 stitches over. Okay, slip that over. And now we have this stitch in the middle. The middle stitch is now the central one, and it is a central double decrease. So the 2 stitches on the outside are going underneath the one on the top. I'll show you them more clearly here in a moment. All right, you can see where my previous decrease was right here, and it is very centralized. It's not leaning to the right or the left, and you can see that the 2 columns that were on either side of it go right underneath. It's a very pretty decrease. Let's do that one more time. I know I went over it a little bit fast, so I'm going to do it one more time. We are in the 3 middle stitches of our knitting. It can be anywhere. Just know that you're going to knit up to 1 stitch before where you want that center column of stitches go. So we're going to take our working needle and go into the 2nd stitch, or the one that's in the center, go into that first knitwise, go through both of them and slip them off onto your working needle. Okay, and then we're going to knit the next stitch just like normal. And then we're going to move these 2 stitches over, kind of like you're binding off a stitch. So we're going to lift them up and over. We're going to pass them over our knit stitch, just like that. And I do kind of hold on to this working yarn back here as I'm pulling it over so that this stitch doesn't fall off. I want it nice and tight, okay? Working on the tips of your needles is also very helpful in not stretching these out as well. Okay, so that one is it. Let's move on to the next portion. Well, now we've done our 5 decreases. Here's your promised bonus material of learning the PSSO, passing the slip stitch over, and also as well as a thing called a almost SSK, little bonus material, and it's an alternate to the slip knit to make it a little bit a prettier of a stitch, I think. And then we were going to go into understanding or reading your knitting. So if you're looking to be a little bit more adventurous in understanding your knitting, stay tuned for that. PSSO, pass the slip stitch over. When you see this written in a pattern, this is how you'll do it. You're going to slip 1 stitch knitwise, and then you're going to knit the next stitch, and then you PSSO, which is pass the slip stitch over. PSSO, pass the slip stitch over that stitch that you worked. Let's do another one. So I'm going to knit 1, and now my pattern would call for either a PSSO, and the instructions would say slip 1, knit 1, PSSO, or PSSO would be if you were told to slip a stitch and then just pass that previous stitch over after you work however many. So it could be like you work 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then you slip the PSSO, plastic stitch, slip stitch over however many stitches you just did, but you still have those 2 stitches, so you're still only decreasing by 1. All right, so the way you normally would see it though is slip 1 stitch knitwise, knit 1, and then pass the slip stitch over. And that is an alternate to a left-leaning decrease and predated the SSK stitch. It tends to stick out a little bit more. You can see it has more of a bump showing on it. So an SSK tends to be what's used, but PSSOs are still used all the time for different patterns. So that's one to keep in mind if you see it pop up. Another way to make the SSK I have found is this thing called an almost SSK. It's not actually written in many places, but I'm going to show you a trick to that one. It is very similar looking. I can show you more of it in the end of our knitting video, some comparisons, but let's go ahead and work an almost SSK. You're going to take the first stitch and slip it knitwise, and then go ahead and set it back on the other needle and knit through the back loop. When you do that, the stitch also still leans in the same direction, but it's a little bit more minimally noticeable than the SSK, and that's the only difference there. As promised, here's a bonus of reading and understanding your knitting. Now, we are talking about a building block here for a beginner series, so I'm not going to go very much into depth, but I do want to point out some samples and what I did. So as a reminder, we have the SSSK, which is taking 3 stitches down to 1, and I have put it at the beginning of my knitting here, and so it leans towards the middle of my knitted project. On the opposite side, I have a knit 3 together, and it is leaning towards the middle of my project. Okay, now this central part here is absolutely balanced. It's just got this pretty center column, and everything sort of feeds into it, and those decreases look beautiful that way. You could switch these two and put them on opposite sides. So if your pattern calls for that, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just the way that the designer made it. Now let's look at the ones that go from 2 stitches down to 1. These funny examples are mine, and I have another one here. And I just want to show you that if the designer calls for making one first over the other, that's okay. They have an intent for that particular pattern. I want you to see what that looks like. This one here, you're seeing these little stitch markers because I'm dividing them up to show you what they look like. I did go over 3 of them that lean towards your knitting. This way, if you put them in the leading edge, they're technically the left leaning decrease, but in the left-handed video, it's going to lean to the right. The first 4 decreases here before the stitch marker are the SSK, okay, slip, slip, knit, and it's going toward the inside of the knitting because it's on this leading edge. It would tilt the other direction. If we put it in the middle or on the other side, it would just tilt the other way. The next one is the almost SSK, which looks nearly the same as this other one. I just think it's a slightly bit faster. And when I did work with the smaller, thinner yarn, it actually was a bit tidier, but not much difference. The pass the slip stitch over, which is the slip 1, knit 1, PSSO, is this one here. Now you don't really see much difference here, but if I was to put this on the end of it, you would see these big lines right here. You would see them kind of overlapping in a very definitive line going across, and it would be more noticeable. So the other side over here is all knit 2 together. So you can see how clean that looks. Now, what happens when you want to put them in the middle? Okay, so this sample right here, I've worked it 2 different ways. first of all, I did this sample right here where I'm working a center stitch, and then I've got the 2 stitches before the center. These are all I'm working with an SSK, okay, all the way up. Every other row is a slip slip knit, and then on the other side of it I'm working a knit 2 together. So you can see how pretty that is, and it makes the center column look almost like when we're taking 3 stitches down to 1. But in this case, the rows where I'm decreasing, I'm actually taking out a stitch here and I'm taking out a stitch here, and so that's what that pattern will call for to make that look. Over here, what I did is I switched it just to show you what it would look like. So you see how it looks like 3 center columns here? That's because we still have that middle column, but when I work these 2 stitches together, I made that a knit 2 together, which makes this column lean to the right, and it mysteriously appears where it disappeared on this side. When I put the middle column in, and then I did the next 2 stitches and I made them an SSK, now they start leaning this direction over here. They're still leaning toward my knitting, which is toward the end, and they make this little extra bump, and it makes it stand out like a little column here, but with this extra little bump. But in this case, a pattern maker could say, well, I want these 3 stitches to kind of really stand out and have this column look here. So I decided, what happened if I flipped it the other way like I did this other one, but let me do the SSK. So I did these 3 with the SSK, but I did the almost SSK. So if you can see comparison, this one versus this one, you can see that this column is slightly less noticeable with these extra long bumps than the SSK. So the almost SSK really is my favorite here. I hope that our decreases video has helped you today in future projects that you have planned, as well as finishing your grandma's favorite dishcloth. So click down in the link below. Remember, you only need 1 decrease, which is the knit 2 together, in order to finish that one. We do have another tutorial coming up. It's our last one in our series, lesson 12, on slip stitches, knitwise, purlwise, and the edges. You've already done some of those slipping today, and we'll do more next week. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us today, where we help you stitch your love and love your stitches. See you again soon.